Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Abidemi, and welcome to our last class for our microeconomics course or intermediate microeconomics course. And I hope so far you have found this very helpful and you've been able to learn a lot of concepts in microeconomics. Most importantly, I hope you guys are doing well and I hope you're keeping up and studying hard. Today, we are going to take a look at market failure. Market failure. So, what is market failure? And market failure refers to the failure of the market system to allocate resources efficiently. It arises because the price mechanism has not taken into account all the cost and or benefit of the production or consumption of the product or service. Market failure occurs when the forces of demand and supply do not lead to an efficient allocation of resources, meaning that the market outcome does not maximize societal welfare. Like when we did perfect competition, when we talk about societal welfare, we are looking at a combination of consumer welfare and producer welfare. All right. In such situations, resources may be overused, underused, or misallocated, leading to inefficiencies that justify government intervention or alternative solutions. And so, if there are market failures, or if the market does not allocate resources in such a way that producers and consumers are equally benefit from it, then the government has to step in. The government has to step in as a result of maybe a concept of what we call subsidy, or the government has to step in as a result of imposing things like tax. We're going to see that as we go on. Okay. So, but when resources are misallocated, when there are no efficiencies in the allocation of resources, then the government has to intervene. We say government intervention. For resources to be allocated efficiently, then we say marginal social cost should be equal to marginal social benefit, or marginal social benefit equal to marginal social cost. Mean MSC equals to MSB. Okay, so for resources to be allocated efficiently, marginal social cost should be equal to marginal social benefit. Now, let's look at some of the types of market failures that can occur. Okay, under the types of market failure, we can have externalities, we can have market failure in terms of public goods, we can have information gaps, we can have labor immobility, we can have market failure in terms of monopoly, we can also have market failure in terms of inequality, whether gender inequality, whether income inequality, every form of inequality within a society, the government usually has to step in to be able to ensure that there is a decrease in gap in terms of inequality. Okay, so let's take a look at externalities. All right, so we are just going to take a look at externalities and public goods. So we're going to compare public goods with private goods, and we are also going to take a look at externalities. So what are externalities? Externalities are costs and benefit to third parties who are not directly part of a transaction between producers and consumers. Let me say that again. Externalities are costs and benefit to third parties who are not directly part of a transaction between producers and consumers. Okay, let me give you an example. For example, those who smoke. If you do smoke, that is a kind of externality, because when you pop out your smoke, the smoke will be going into other people's nostrils, or people in the environment is going to be polluting the environment. And so those within the environment did not go to the supermarket to get that cigarette with you. It was just you, the buyer of that cigarette, and the producer. You both of you had that transaction. The third parties within an environment didn't have anything to do with that transaction you had with the producer. So that's a kind of negative externality, which we're going to take a look at. What about examples of positive externalities? For example, I usually say education is a form of positive externality. Okay, for example, you go to school, you go to study, and after studying, you go back to your country, you invent something. Okay, when you invented a thing, people actually said, wow, someone has invented something. And so they get out of your concept, they get out of your idea, they get out of the knowledge you have paid for. You were the one who went to the university to pay for your school to study. They were not the one. But based on the knowledge you've gotten from school, others are able to benefit from it. Third parties are able to benefit from it without directly being involved in the classroom. Do you get it? So externalities, that's why I say are cost and benefit. So smoking within the environment is a kind of cost because it negatively affects people. Education is a kind of benefit to them, third party benefit, because it has a positive impact on people. Okay, furthermore, there are an effect, spillover effect, arising from the production or consumption of a good or service, which is not taken into consideration by the price mechanism. Externalities can also be explained as positive or negative side effects of an economic activity that affect third parties who are not directly involved in transactions. These effects are not reflected in market prices, leading to market inefficiencies and justifying potential government intervention. There are two types of externalities. So, you know what market failure is? When the market fails to allocate resources efficiently. You know what externalities are? Sorry, excuse me. Which refers to third party effects. Okay? Third party effects on people who are not directly involved in the transaction. Now, there are two types of externalities. We can have positive externalities, we can also have negative externalities. Under positive externalities, we can have positive externalities under production or consumption. Under negative externalities, we can also have negative externalities under production or consumption. For example, take a look at positive externalities. Benefits to third parties because of actions of consumers and producers. Okay, that's positive externalities under consumption and production, consumers and producers. We can also have negative externalities, which are caused to third parties as a result of actions of, okay, negative externalities under consumption and under production. Now, let's take a look at positive externalities in consumption. So, positive externalities in consumptions are benefit to third parties due to actions of consumers. In brackets, you could see right here, I put that marginal social benefit will be greater than marginal social cost. So I defined later, after looking at the four types of externalities, that's positive externalities under consumption, positive externalities under production, negative externalities under consumption, and negative externalities under production. I did define all these concepts. We're going to take a look at it. So positive externalities in consumption are benefits to third parties due to the actions of consumers. Examples include education. Okay, I've given you an example of that. Healthcare, a well-kept garden, and exercise. The government can subsidize goods and services to encourage consumption. Okay, for example, let me give you an example of exercise. If you are always carrying out your exercise from time to time, that makes you very fit. If you are fit, it means that you can be productive. If you are productive, you can be, for example, maybe you can invent something, or maybe you can come up with ideas, or maybe you can come up with concepts that people have not seen. Just because you are in shape, you are in fit, you are mentally stable, it can have third party effect, third party benefit on others. For example, just because you are being fit, someone else can see you and say, wow, I like to have that kind of shape. That person looks so, his body physique or our body physique looks so good. And so I'm also going to go to the gym. I'm going to take a walk in the morning. I'm going to start jogging. I'm going to start playing basketball. I mean, just because you do what you need to do can have positive impact on others. All right. So under positive externalities in consumption or under positive externalities in production, one thing is should be very clear. It means you do not have enough goods that are beneficial to the society. And so the government has to step in. They have to step in terms of providing subsidies or subsidizing goods and services to encourage consumption. Okay, so under positive externalities in consumption, the goods are not enough. The goods that are very beneficial to the society are not enough. And so the government has to find a way to encourage that consumption of the good or service through the concept of what we call subsidies or subsidizing goods and services. Okay, so I said there that the government can subsidize goods and services to encourage consumption. In positive externalities, you can also have what we call deadweight laws, or welfare laws. Okay, welfare laws could be, like I mentioned, it could be laws on consumers, could be laws on producers, could even be losses on the government themselves. Okay, so deadweight laws is the additional benefit of surpluses gained by consumers. In bracket, I said consumers benefit because they now consume more of the good or service, which provides greater utility not only to them, but also to others through positive external effect. For producers, producers gain from producers gain from increased demand and potentially higher revenues, and potential higher revenues, and the government may achieve higher social welfare, which is the ultimate goal, from the extra units of goods produced to achieve societal optimum. Okay, we're going to take a look at what societal or social optimum is when we look at figure 12.1. So you see here it says there is also underproduction and underconsumption. Like I said, under positive externalities in consumption, there is not enough goods that are so beneficial to the environment. And so the government has to encourage the consumption of those goods and services so that people can consume them. And that can come by subsidizing the product. Now, let's take a look. So this is, let me take this to 150 so that we can see this graph, 12.1. So this is the graph of positive externalities under consumption. Okay, one thing you must know is this is like a normal demand and supply curve. Okay, it's like a normal, let me use a pen, demand and supply curve. So if I'm asking you to draw this in your exam, if you're going to draw this, so you already know how to draw your demand curve. This is demand. Okay, right here. So we are going to start from private optimum right here. So you draw this, the normal demand equals MPB. So look at this. This is MPB. So you put your MPB here. Marginal private benefit. Okay. So also you have your supply, which is marginal social cost equal to marginal private cost. Remember, I said at what point are resources efficiently allocated? Okay. At what point do we say we're going to achieve what we call social or societal optimum? At the point where marginal social benefit equal to marginal social cost. Marginal social benefit equals to marginal social cost. So don't forget that. So you would know which direction we are going to. So if we are going to start from here, for example, where we have private optimum. So your private optimum is the point where you are personally satisfied based on self-interest. But there are no societal optimum. The impact on the society has not been fully accounted for. Okay? So you start from your private optimum, which I wrote there that is different by self-interest. So we have to find a way to move to our social optimum. So what happens? We shift our demand curve or marginal private benefit curve to the right. Okay, you can see the direction here. Yes. All right. And our new curve will be MSB, marginal social benefit. What are we trying to attain? We are trying to attain a social optimum where marginal social benefit equals to marginal social cost. You can see that right here. This is your social or societal optimum. You can see MSC right here. You can see MSB right here. Okay, so trace it. Okay, right here also trace this down. Okay, so this is positive externalities in consumption. Okay, so you have, this is Q, sorry, this is Q1, this is Q2, this is P1, this is P2. So P is moving from P1 to P2, and Q is moving from Q1 to Q2. So Q2 is the social optimum. Q1 is the private optimum. This is the equilibrium of the private optimum, and this is the equilibrium of the. So in private optimum, usually your marginal private benefit will be equal to your private marginal cost, okay, or marginal private cost. So MPB will be equal to MPC, okay. But in your social optimum or societal optimum, MSB would be equal to your MSC, okay. All right. Let me clear this and make some explanation. So under, I said under positive externality consumption, the goods that are beneficial to the society are not enough. And so the government has to encourage the consumption, all right? And you can see that here. How do we know the goods are not enough? Okay, or how do we have a welfare loss where social benefit is greater than social cost? Okay, this is point of social benefit. The benefit is greater than social cost. Okay, you could see death weight loss or welfare loss. There's a welfare loss. Why? Because the benefit we have from consuming the goods and services is greater than the social cost. If there's not going to be a welfare loss, it means we must get to a point where marginal social benefit will be equal to marginal social cost. All right. Also, look at this part. I said, for example, here, goods and services that are beneficial to society are not being produced enough. Okay. And further, you have social benefit equals private benefit plus external benefit. Now, let's move to positive externalities in production. So under positive externalities in production, marginal social cost is less than marginal private cost, or we can say the marginal private cost is greater than the marginal social cost. So we have people who are producers who are having their private benefit. I could say that, okay, but there are no societal, there are no increase in societal impact of those goods that they are producing. And so more has to be produced as a result of government subsidies. Okay, so I said there are benefits to third parties because of actions of producers. For example, research and development and in-work training. There's also under production and under consumption. So in positive externalities in consumption, one thing you must note is what is the curve that is going to shift? We can say it is the demand curve. This is a demand curve. So we can say this one is D1, this one is D2. Okay, so there's an increase in demand curve. All right, so I could decide to write MPP equals D or MSB equals D because they are demand curves. Okay, but you have to put marginal private benefit and MSB so that we can see where the private optimum is. We can also see where the social or societal optimum is. Okay, so let me go down again. All right, so under positive externalities in production, again, we don't have enough goods that are being produced that are beneficial. And so the government has to encourage the consumption. For positive externalities in production, one thing you must take care of is production, suppliers, production, suppliers. Who are those who supply goods and services? Okay, or who are those who produce goods and services? They are the firms, the businesses that the one who supply. So we are going to take a look at the supply curve. So it is the supply curve that is going to change. Okay, so again, you have your demand curve, you have your supply curve. So it starts from uh, private optimum. Okay, this is it here, your private optimum. So this is moving to the right. You can see here, I put it here, right? This is also moving. This is going to be moving downwards. Okay, why? Because the supply curve is increasing, is shifting to the right. Okay. We also have a deadweight loss. This is the deadweight loss here. Okay. So if you are drawing it like this, like this, like this, like your supply. So if you have this, the supply curve moving to the right, price is going to fall. You're going to have an increase in quantity. All right. So this gap right here means we don't have enough goods that are being produced that are beneficial to the society. All right. Let's move to that of negative externalities. So under negative externalities, you have your marginal negative externalities in production. Your marginal social cost will be greater than your marginal private cost. I'm sure if you take a look at it, you will see the difference. This is positive externalities in production. You see that the supply curve is shifting to the right, but under negative externalities in production, you would see right here that the supply curve is shifting to the left. You see that? You see that? So one basic concept under negative externality is that there are so many goods and services within the society that are being produced that are not needed. And so the government has to discourage the consumption of these goods through maybe taxes. All right. So we need government intervention to be able to discourage. It could be excessive alcohol, it could be excessive cigarettes, it could be excessive sugar, it could be excessive pollution, it could be what I wanted to say something. All right. So anything that it could be excessive fast food consumption. So if you have fast food restaurants all around the country, and you know people are getting obese, people are getting bigger. So what does the government do? The government can decide to levy a tax, okay, in such a way that is going to discourage new firms from coming to start their own um, fast food restaurants, or discourage existing firms to be able to expand, especially if it is very detrimental to the society. Okay, so the difference between negative externalities in production, positive externalities in production, and negative externality right here in production is that for positive externalities in production, the supply curve shift to the right. For negative externalities in production, the supply curve shift to the left. And you can see right here, you see I put up this shift to the left, yeah, and you can see, so you have your private optimum right here, driven by self-interest. Okay, you have your social optimum. So we have to discourage the consumption of those goods, move them backward to the social optimum. And you can see prices increasing from P1 to P2. Let me read what we have on the negative externalities in production. They are caused to third parties because of the actions of production. Examples include air pollution, resource depletion. I said future generations could lose income due to resource depletion, resource degradation, waste being dumped in local river. They cause death, stroke diseases, and what we call deforestation. The government can tax goods and services to discourage consumption. There is overproduction and overconsumption. Okay, In negative externalities, both in production and negative externalities in consumption, there is overproduction and overconsumption. And so the government has to discourage the consumption of those goods and services. Okay, what about negative externalities in consumption? In negative externalities in consumption, marginal social benefit is less than marginal private benefit, or we say marginal private benefit is greater than marginal social benefit. These are costs to third parties as a result of actions of consumers. Examples include smoking, excessive alcohol, and excessive consumption of sugar or fast food. There's overproduction and overconsumption. Once again, if you take a look at positive externalities in consumption, you can see that the demand curve is shifting to the right. Let's take a look at negative externalities in consumption. I'm sure the demand curve is shifting to the left. This is it right here. Yeah, you can see that. So we want to move back that private optimum. We want to move it to a social optimum where MSB equals to MSB, and MSB equals to MSC. And you can see right here under negative externalities in consumption that social cost is greater than social benefit. We don't want that. We want to get to a point where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost. Okay, so if you look at the difference, positive externalities in consumption, the demand curve is shifting to the right. Yes. And if demand curve is shifting to the right, it means that price will move from P1 to P2 and quantity will also move from Q1 to Q2. Yes. If you take a look at positive externalities in production, you could see that the supply curve is shifting to the right. We make price to fall and your quantity increase in such a way that you're going to get to the social optimum. Take a look at negative externalities in production. The supply curve will be shifting to the left. If supply curve shifts to the left, price increases and quantity falls. Take a look at negative externalities in consumption. You could see that the demand curve shifts to the left, right? And P falls from P1 to P2, and Q also falls from Q1 to Q2. Okay, let's see what we have here. So you understand the concept, right? So what are the definitions of the concept? Marginal social cost. Marginal social cost is the additional cost incurred by society from the production or consumption of one extra unit of good or service. What about marginal social benefit? Marginal social benefit is the additional benefit to society as a whole from the consumption or production of one extra unit of a good or service. What about marginal private cost? The marginal private cost is the additional cost incurred by producer or consumer for producing or consuming one extra unit of a good or service. It represents the cost borne directly by the individual or firm involved in economic activity, excluding any cost imposed on others. What about marginal private benefit? Marginal private benefit is the additional benefit gained by an individual consumer or producer from consuming or producing one more unit of a good or service. All right, so those are the explanations of this concept: marginal private benefit, marginal private cost, marginal social benefit, and marginal social cost. Now, let's take a look at public goods and differentiate it from private goods. So for public goods, there are two major characteristics. They are non-rivalrous and they are non-excludable. They are non-rivalrous and they are non-excludable. Let's take a look at non-rivalrous. This means that consumption by one person does not limit consumption by others. All right, you all have equal benefits. Okay, for example, if you go to the park, okay, and you use a park, does not mean that others cannot go to that park and use that same park. There's no competition. It's available to everybody. All right. What about non-excludable? It means if a good is available for one person, then it is available for all. Examples include street light, national park, security personnel. For example, security personnel, Even if you don't pay your tax or you don't do your student permit, the police will still have to protect your life and property. All right. So the provision of public goods leads to what we call a free rider problem, where people do not pay for public services. People who do not pay for public services still benefit from this service. All right. So one of the problems of public goods that arises as a result of providing public goods is free rider problem. Free rider problem simply means even if you don't pay your tax, even if you don't do your student permit, even if you don't do what you need to do, the government still tends to provide services to you. Things like the protection of your life, things like you can still go take a walk in the park, things like you can still take a walk to school. All right, you can still, you still have that freedom to enjoy public goods, even if you are not doing what you need to do. What about private goods? So private goods are right virus. Okay, so they also have two characteristics. They are right virus and they are excludable. This means that consumption by one person limits consumption by others. That's for right virus. And excludable, it means if a good is available for one person, then it might not be available for all, especially if you cannot pay for it. Okay, so public goods, non-right virus, and non-excludable. Private goods, right virus, and excludable. And public goods, provision of public goods creates what we call a free rider problem, whereby people who even don't do what they need to do still enjoy public services. Right? So what are the review questions that you have? What is a market failure? What are the types of market failure? What are externalities? What is the free rider problem? Explain the concept of positive and negative externalities for both consumers and producers. Of course, you know we have four of them. Positive externalities in production, positive externalities in consumption. Negative externalities in production, negative externalities in consumption. Then we also have, I also said, define marginal social cost, marginal social benefit, marginal private cost, and marginal private benefit. And these are for your further readings. So I put some YouTube links here. If you want to have more understanding of market failure, you can go through the links that might help you to expand your ideas on the concept of market failure. But most importantly, we want a society where societies are efficiently allocated. We want a society where the losses that will come to consumers and producers and even the government themselves will be very, very minimal. Okay, so government or societies try to ensure, their policies are aimed at driving at maximization of societal welfare. Of course, we know that governments have their own, some governments create policies that are not beneficial to people. All right. So, but the sole aim of creating policies will be to maximize societal welfare. And maximize societal welfare will mean that consumers can meet their needs. The consumer standard of living or people's standard of living gets better. For producers, it means that they can produce more goods that are beneficial to the society. They can expand their business. They can make more revenue, which can translate into more profit. Okay, so the goal, why we are discussing market failure, is that we want a society where the provision of goods and services are able to or is able to maximize the societal welfare. All right. Until I see you next time. So for this course, this is the last chapter we'll be stopping at. All right. So go through it, study it. If you have questions, don't hesitate to put a question in the comment section, or if you are my student, you could ask me when we get to class. All right. Until I see you next time, don't give up. Keep studying. Keep dreaming. Keep your dreams alive. And I believe things are going to get better for you. And don't forget to work very hard and study very hard. Okay. All right. Bye and God bless.